All right. Thanks for joining me this morning. We'll go ahead and get started here. So if you got your questions, go ahead and post them on the right-hand side there. You should be able to see where it says ask questions with Top Speed Golf instructors or chat with Top Speed Golf instructors. And then you'll see your name in the little white box there. Type your question in the box and we'll go ahead and get it answered. So we will start with Paul O.R. It says, in looking at my own videos, I see that I have a bit of a chicken wing. It doesn't seem like I'm casting or coming over the top. I tend to swing in to out and usually have a draw. Can you discuss causes for a chicken wing and ways to correct it? So that's a good question. So there's a kind of a chicken wing that isn't a bad thing. And then there's a chicken wing that you see more commonly, which is an issue of swing mechanics. So the chicken wing that you see that isn't necessarily a bad thing is what you're going to see on Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Lee Westwood. It's where they get kind of that bent lead arm as they're coming through contact. They're kind of like this. And I'm getting closer. I plan on, if I have time today, I'm going to plan on mounting the projector so I can actually show you tour players swing and show you exactly what I'm talking about. But basically what you see with those players is that they're coming through contact and they have kind of a bent lead arm like this. But all of their swing mechanics are good. Then Jamie Sidlowski, long drive champion, also bent lead arm as they're coming into impact. There's a lot of really great players who have bent lead arms at impact. So it's not something that's a universal truth. So the bent lead arm, kind of the chicken wing at impact, can be fine as long as you're nailing all the other pieces of the Top Speed Golf system. So as long as you're nice and stable with your spine, you're getting a good shoulder turn, you're coming into contact, you're in a great contact position, you are releasing that club out in front, that chicken wing is completely fine. Where you see the bad chicken wing is the flippy chicken wing. This is the chicken wing where basically the arms are outracing the body. These are people who don't really use their legs much in their swing and basically just swing all arms. Because a chicken wing, that kind of chicken wing, the bad kind of chicken wing, which I'll show you a demonstration here in a second, is a product of the arms outracing the upper body. So basically what that would look like, let me angle this down just a little bit. What that would look like is something like this. I'm coming down into contact. My hips stall out. I'm not moving my hips anymore. My hips are pretty much square to the ball. They stall out. I come through contact, and I'm looking like this. So my arms are racing through. I'm kind of doing this kind of flippy motion. I'm kind of in, this is exaggerated. A lot of people aren't chicken winging this much, but it probably looks something like this or something like that through contact. But it's the arms out racing the body, and we get that early release of the club and kind of that flippy nature through impact. From this angle, it looks something like this. I'm coming into contact. My hips are pretty much square to my ball. I'm coming into contact. My arms are just kind of racing out in front because that's what's happening. My body is slowing down, and the arms, because there's momentum of the club head, the arms just keep on going out in front. So the way to fix that is to get the legs involved in the golf swing. You got to get a proper weight shift. And as soon as you get weight into that pressure into that lead foot, you need to be rotating, pushing into the ground and rotating and pulling everything through so that you can release out in front. And the best drill to work on that is what is called the step drill. And what you're doing in this step drill is you are starting with your feet together. And I'll tell you on the website where you can find it. There's lots of places. You're starting with your feet together. And as soon as you start that swing going back, you are stepping forward. So you're getting your momentum moving forward. And that way you can get a lot of pressure. You can feel a lot of pressure in that lead foot going into the ground. That's going to help you to really rotate and pull this body through so you can release that club out in front. So again, that's going to be the step drill. You can find this drill easily. And again, I hope here tomorrow, hopefully, tomorrow morning, I can hopefully be able to show you on the website how to look for things, where to look for it, what to search, and so on and so forth. I think it's going to add a lot to the office hours. But anyway, go to the search engine on the website. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little search box. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The little search box, search the word downswing. There's a great video. It's called How to Start the Downswing. And I bring this up in every single office hours, I think, because there's always someone asking about chicken wing or weight shift. Because this video, weight shift is very, very important for the golf swing. If you're not using your legs, then you're not going to have good swing mechanics. You can hit great golf shots. It doesn't mean you can't play good golf. It just means that your swing, you're not going to have the most efficient swing if you're not using your legs. So get your legs more involved in the swing. Do the step drill. I do it a lot. You can do it daily. You can do this in the backyard. Like I said, go to the search engine on the website, search the word downswing. The video is called How to Start the Downswing. It's usually the 4th video down on the search results. It's got some yellow lettering in the thumbnail of the video. That's going to be the video that you want. But Clay talks about some other things and then demonstrates the step drill in that video. You can also find this in the Stop Chunking and Topping course. You can find it. It's the sumo step drill in the 20-minute distance fix. There's probably 5 or 6 videos on the website where we show the step drill. But I think I really like that the How to Start the Downswing video. That's going to be one of the best ones. And that's the best way to get rid of your chicken wing is to get your legs more involved. Get the body rotating. If you have the chicken wing where you're coming into contact, square club face, you are releasing this club out in front, you're still seeing all the good things that we want to see in the top speed golf system, then that's completely fine. That's like the chicken wing that the #1 player in the world has, Brooks Koepka, okay? So that's completely fine. But if it's a chicken wing where you're coming into contact, your body really stalls out, and you're doing this action through contact, you're releasing that club early, that's a chicken wing that we don't want, because that's going to lead well, one, you're really hurting your speed. You're not you're not generating as much speed as what you could. And 2, it's just going to be hard to be consistent when you're doing that. Getting your lower body more involved is going to make you more efficient and more consistent as well. All right. Let's go on to the next question here. So Jens Eric S says, "Hi Q. Recently I've gone through the speed swing training sector, 1, 2, and 3. So far, so good. But I think Clay has overlooked a very important part, as he does not dig into the shaft to be attached on the club heads. Kindly explain, suggest the relationship between swing head speed and shaft stiffness. Thank you in advance for your input. Jens Eric. P.S. I am playing Dilla Voodoo Escort, blah, blah, blah." So we are not in the club fitting business. That can make a difference, absolutely. But it's way, way, way more about what you do with the club and not the actual club itself. Now, when you go and get a club fitting, they should be able to optimize it for you to where it's the correct weight. Sometimes you can swing a heavier shaft faster than a lighter shaft, and vice versa. It should be the right length. So the correct length that you are able to control and able to get the most amount of club head speed with. It should be the correct swing weight, meaning kind of the balance point of the club that gives you the most distance and the most consistency. Should put you in the right head weight, the shaft stiffness. And the big reason why we don't talk about this stuff is, one, that we don't offer any services to help with that. And 2, and like I said before, it's not you're going to adjust to your clubs. Like, you're going to adapt to your club. So if you have a club with a really whippy shaft and you swing it and it goes a mile to the right, you're not just going to keep hitting it a mile to the right. You're going to adjust to get that club face more close so you can hit straighter shots. So you adjust a lot to your equipment. That's why club fitting, it's important, but I wouldn't look at it as it's going to take you from a 10 handicap to a scratch handicap. It's not how it works. It typically really doesn't improve your handicap much at all. I've been fitted for clubs several times. It doesn't change my handicap whatsoever. It may make things a little bit easier, but it really hasn't changed my handicap at all. So clubs can make a difference to a certain extent, but not unless you're going from 50-year-old clubs to the technology. If you're getting clubs several times, every few years, the technology usually doesn't advance that much to where it's making that huge a difference. And like I said, I'm not a huge club guy. I'm not into all the little club things, but it's so much more about what you do with it, which is what the 20-minute distance fix is all about. Now, as far as the shaft stiffness, some people are going to swing better with a stiffer shaft versus a softer shaft, and so on and so forth. And there's no standard as well. One company's extra stiff shaft can be just as stiff as a company's regular stiff shaft. There's no standard. So for me to say you need to play a stiff shaft, that could be, that's not a blanket statement, right? Because one company's stiff shaft could be like a senior flex kind of shaft in another company or another product line. There's no standard for stiffness on the shaft. So what the thing that you can do when you go and get fitted is just to hit as many as you can. And if you're with a good club fitter, what they'll do is they'll have an idea. They'll probably in their mind they'll have about 5 shafts that they think would be really good for you based on your club head speed, the tempo of your swing, how quick you are in transition, the length of the shaft, all these sorts of things. They'll have an idea of what's going to be the best, and then they'll just hand that to you, and they'll try to basically you'll swing and hit them into a launch monitor and find out what works best. So now, if you have a shaft that's way too whippy, it's not stiff enough, what you can have is what's called forward deflection at contact, and that can slow you down a little bit. But we're talking like a couple miles per hour. It's not going to slow you down an insane amount. It's just going to be like a couple miles per hour. Whereas if you go through the 20-minute distance fix and you do the neural adaptation, you increase your range of motion. I mean, typically you're going to gain at least 10 miles per hour in that 3 weeks. So that's typically what we see. We see people gain 20 plus miles per hour too. That's a huge difference. Whereas your clubs, a lot of times it's going to make a small difference in most cases. Every now and then you might, if you have equipment that's just way, way, way wrong for you, and then you get in to equipment that is perfectly suited for you, sure, that can make a huge difference, but that's not the reality. Most people are in something that's, even if they get something off the shelf that's newer, most of the time they're going to have something that's pretty close to correct for them, and getting actually fitted isn't going to gain a ton. It's probably going to gain maybe a couple miles per hour, if anything. A lot of times it doesn't do anything. So that's basically club fitting. I wouldn't put too much into it. That's just my opinion. But like I said, I'm not an expert in club fitting. I don't know that much about it. But I do know in my experience, I've been fitted several times for clubs, and in my experience talking with Clay and Robin and a lot of other people who've been fitted for clubs, it's not like a game changer by any means. All right. So Paul H says, how do you align yourself if you want to hit a draw? So basically the only thing that needs to happen to hit a draw is the face needs to be closed to the path. So the way that I do it is I like to set up with a little bit of a closed stance. So essentially I'll drop my trail foot back a little bit, and that makes it a little bit easier for me to swing from the inside. So what I do is I'll aim my face at the target. So I'll take a little bit stronger of a grip, aim my face at the target, close my stance a little bit, and then swing basically along my feet and get that club working from the inside with the face close to the path. That's the way that I do it. I think that's the way that most people do it. You can also do it just by setting up to the ball and feeling like you're swinging into out and closing the face more. Like you can hit a draw just with your swing as well. So there's no wrong way to do it. The only thing that needs to happen is your face needs to be close to the path. So like I said, I like to set up with a little bit of a closed stance, depending on how much of a draw I want. So if it's a slight draw, I might drop my foot back just a little bit, 2 or 3 inches, make it easier to swing from the inside, strengthen my grip a little bit, basically closes the face a couple degrees, and then I swing around my toe line, and I get that club working into out with the face that's pointing at the target. It'll start a little bit to the right and then curve toward the target. But like I said, there's lots of ways that you can do it. It's really I think that's the easiest way. The same thing for a fade. If I'm hitting a fade, I'll set up with a little bit open of my stance, and I'll feel like I'm kind of holding the face open as I'm going through contact. So instead of kind of rolling this face over, I'll feel like I'm holding that face open, more contact pointed at the target, and then that will allow that ball to fade a little bit. That's how I typically do it. Makes it it's pretty easy to do it that way. But like I said, There's no wrong way to do it. That's just the easiest way I think it is to do it. All right, so go ahead and get your questions posted here, and we will get them answered. Yeah, so in the right-hand side there, should be able to answer a question. And just an update, if you haven't been here, I got this up yesterday. Didn't have a chance to get up the so after the office hours yesterday, I went and worked out, and I came home and watched my Colts get pummeled by the Saints, and then did a little bit of work. So I wasn't able to get that up, but hopefully later on today, I'll have some time. I still got a lot of work I got to get done today, but hopefully I got time later today. I can mount the ceiling mount for the projector screen and get that going, because I think it'd be really cool once we get it up and going. I think it's gonna be awesome. So go ahead and get your questions posted in there. You got them? I gotta figure out how far away I need to get it as well, because it is a short throw projector, and I'm worried that it's going to be right on this light where I need to have that. So it might be interesting. But yeah, once I get that set up, I'll be able to show you stuff on the website. I'll be able to pull it up. I'm going to have my iPad. I'll basically have, I'll be able to bring up V1, show you tour player swings. I can show you what that good chicken wing looks like, what the bad chicken wing looks like. I don't know if I'll be able to show you. I might have to get some common swing fault swings on there and show you stuff like that. But yeah, go ahead and get your questions on there. If you're just joining us, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. So go ahead and post your questions on there. In the meantime, I will be checking my email here. And then swing review spots, we opened up some today, actually yesterday. So I still have a few spots available. So if you're interested, I only open up spots periodically. So if you're interested in signing up for the Element swing reviews, get feedback on your swing, have me pinpoint exactly what you need to work on, I would click that Learn More button at the top above the video, or you can always click the Get a Review to go to the page where you can sign up. You can sign up for Element swing reviews. Pretty cool program. All right, so we got a question from Dennis G. Dennis G says, "Will turning my core rather than turning shoulders in the backswing help reduce excessive head movement to the right?" Well, you want to be turning both. I mean, you're going to be turning your torso, right? And you're going to be turning your shoulders. So there's all these links in the chain, right, that we're turning. So your average hip turn, right, of a tour player is going to be about 50 degrees. And I think everybody should be trying to get to at least that much. And I haven't seen anybody who really isn't able to get to that much. You may need to make an adjustment. You may need to lift the lead heel off the ground. You may need to turn the trail foot out a little bit to help you turn. But that's basically where you should be getting to. Now, the next part is with your thoracic spine. That's where you're getting that turn. Your core, I guess I don't understand exactly what you mean by core, but where the separation of your hips and your shoulders comes from, it's mostly in your spine, your upper spine, which referred to as your thoracic spine. So your lower spine is stable. It doesn't really, they won't, the little vertebrae or whatever, they won't really turn much. It stays pretty stable. But as you go up your spine, the vertebrae can turn on each other like that. And that's your thoracic spine. And that's where you're getting this turn from the separation between your hips and your shoulders. So you can see here, if I don't turn my hips at all, you can see that's all from my thoracic spine, that turning there. And then the second part where you get your shoulder turn from the third part is going to be from the protraction and retraction of the shoulders. So protraction is shoulder blade moving away from the spine. Retraction is shoulder blade moving toward the spine. So when you are turning up to the top, your lead shoulder here is protracting. My shoulder blade is moving away from the spine, and my trail shoulder is retracting. The shoulder blade is moving toward the spine. So you get about 20 degrees typically of rotation. This isn't something you have to think about typically. It's usually something that happens very naturally as you're trying to get up to the top. But that's basically where your shoulder turn comes from. It comes from, so if you talk about your average tour player, I can go through the averages. It's 118 is the average tour player, but let's call it 120 just to make the math easy. So 120 degree hip or total shoulder turn. That's from this address position up all the way to the top is about 120 degrees. So 50 degrees of that is coming from the hips turning. That's just the hips in relationship to the ground, right? And then another 50 degrees is from the separation of my hips and my rib cage, basically. So getting my rib cage to turn, that's another 50 degrees. Now, not everyone's going to be able to do that. As you get older, it gets more difficult. Your spine curves more. Your posture changes. That gets more difficult. And that's not really one you can really make adjustments for. You can go to the doctor and try to get that worked out a little bit. But that is one that, if you have a limitation there, it can be tough. But as long as you're getting that big hip turn and you're getting a little bit from here and you're getting that protraction, retraction, you're going to be in good shape. You're going to be able to get to 90 degrees. So you can go as much as 60 degrees with the hip turn. And if you get, hopefully 10, 20 degrees from the separation of the hips and your rib cage, if you get that, then you're going to be able to get to 90 pretty easily. So, but if you add those all together, so 50 degrees from the hips, 50 degrees of the rib cage, and then 20 degrees from the protraction, retraction, that adds up to 120 degrees. And that's basically where that comes from. So, so as far as turning the core is concerned, I mean, I guess your core is pretty broad. Your core is going to be basically that turning of the rib cage. But yeah, that's what's going to help you. 50 on average, a tour player about 50 degrees is coming from that. Now, as far as reducing excessive head movement is usually caused by poor spine angles, right? So as long as your spine angles are good, your head movement is usually completely fine, unless you're kind of standing up. If you're standing up, that's a different. But if you're looking from face on, if I stay in my spine angles here, so I want to be nice and angled away at address about 6 to 8 degrees. We talk about this in the Stable Fluid Spine course. If I go up to the top and I stay in that 6 to 8 degrees angled away position, my overall angle of my torso here, I'm not going to have. There can be a little bit of movement toward this way. In fact, you're typically going to see a tour player's head go down and back just a little bit, mostly down, but back just a little bit. Many times you see it just goes down, but some tour players, you see it will go back a little bit as they're moving momentum into their trail side. Now, if it's like this, that's a completely different story. If I'm going like this, look at my spine angle. My spine angle is like that, right? So as long as you're keeping your spine angle nice and angled away, you're most likely not going to end up with too much head movement, because you just can't. You can't. It's hard to move your head when your spine is stable. It's just not going to move too much. So as long as your spine is nice and stable, that's really what you should focus on. Now, if you're doing this action where you're going up like that, then that's another issue. That's coming up out of your posture. You want to make sure that you are turning your shoulders down. If you watch, if I go up, look what happens to my shoulders. They level out, right? I've seen people at the top of the swing with their shoulders completely level, and that's from doing this action. So we need to make sure that we are staying in our posture and we're getting into that steeper shoulder turn as we're going up to the top. And that's there's a great drill on the website. That's called shoulder to shoulder drill. And in that drill, what you do is you take a club, put it right across your shoulders here, and you turn. You put something on the ground. I believe you put a towel on the ground, and you turn and you try to get the butt end of the club pointing down toward the towel. If I'm up like this, I'm not going to be down toward the towel. So that helps you to stay in your posture in the backswing, and then in the downswing, you're actually steeper as you're coming through there. So I'd recommend that drill. You can find that drill. Just search the word shoulder to shoulder, 2 words. It's 3 words. Shoulder, and then the word to, which is TO, and then shoulder. You can find that video that I'm talking about. And Dennis, if you have any other questions about head movement, I'll be happy to help with that. All right. So Paul H says, in using lag, it seems as though you develop lag by rotating properly and leading with your lower body. Is that correct? So yeah, it's definitely part of it. That's what creates some really good momentum. If you're not rotating your lower body, you're going to tend to want to cast because your body, because your arms and stuff are racing in front of your body. That's definitely part of it. But a lot of people have, I think there's this illusion out there that I've heard some instruction, which is just flat out wrong about how lag is just a byproduct of swing mechanics and that of proper swing mechanics, and that also shallowing of the club just comes from rotating the hips. That couldn't be further from the truth. And really, that's, who says that is people who are already getting tons of lag and shallowing out the club. That's who says that. People who don't have any issues with that. But I see thousands of students time and time again who are rotating their hips but come over the top, or are rotating their hips but don't shallow the club, or casting the club, and so on and so forth. So just because, now I will say, because the reason why instructors think this is, or some instructors think this, is because if you imagine, if I'm like this, I'm just going to have it with one arm here, and I'm going to have the shaft straight up and down. If I just rotate my body, look what happens to the club, right? The club wants to drop down. So scientifically, yes, the momentum of the club, because my force of my hand is going this way, that club head's going to want to align with the direction that force is going. So it's going to want to shallow out. But you know what? We are strong people. And we don't always let that happen because it doesn't feel comfortable for us. Because when that club gets under like this, we feel like a lot of people feel like they're going to hit it a mile to the right. So what do? They keep coming down steep. So maybe they're opening up their body, but they're coming down like this so that they can hit a straight shot. Because to them, that feels like they can get the face squared up that way. So, and when you do that, you have to cast the club. You have to cast the club to get the club into that position. So shallowing is not turning the body. Definitely that's important for shallowing out the club, but you got to learn how to square up the face too. That's the second part of it. And that's a part that a lot of instructors that I've seen on YouTube or wherever make that mistake, is that they don't really talk about that part. They just say, just do this to shallow the club. That doesn't shallow the club necessarily. You can still go like this and come down steep, or you can still go like this and cast the club. It's all in a reaction to you being able to hit a good shot. What we're trying to do here, what our brains are trying to do, is we're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face with a square club face, with with not a lot of curvature. We're trying to hit the ball where we want it to go. That we have an objective, right? We're not just trying to get lag. We have an objective to get good impact. So everything that we typically do with our swing is an effort to make that happen. So it's your brain's way of thinking, okay, this is how I got to square up the face. Now, it's not always right. It's not always the right way or the best way, but that's how your body's putting it together. So what you have to do is you have to change kind of the way that you're thinking of how you do that, so that you can do it in the most efficient way. And that's basically what the Toss Big Y'all system is. That's what the move is. Those are that's what we're seeing the best players in the world. That's how they're doing it, and that's how they're able to play really good golf. So it's definitely important to have body rotation, because if you don't, you're typically are going to cast, release the club early, come down steep, all those sorts of things. But it's not what gives you lag. That's not where lag comes from. If you are doing this action, and I say this because I've actually worked with students directly on lag who were already doing those things, and they were able to work on getting this, this club in this right place in the downswing to be able to generate lag while working on it directly, even though they were rotating their body and everything else. So, I've just heard a lot of instructors say, lag is a byproduct of things that you do with your body and so on and so forth. That comes from people who don't know how to teach lag and who are already getting lag themselves, and that's what it feels like to them. But the reality is that for someone who's not getting lag, that's not what it feels like to them. It feels completely different. So we have to change that feel to get to where we can get that lag. All right. So Richard S says, when you release out in front, is not the speed from release coming late after the ball is gone? No. So when the club is releasing, it's actually slowing down. It's actually fastest at the golf ball. So when the club is releasing, that's typically when it's slowing down, especially when it's releasing out in front. So when you're here, this is the fastest point in the golf swing right here. Whether you're releasing early or not, the fastest part of the golf swing is still at the bottom at the golf ball. But especially when you are releasing this club out in front, that club is actually decelerating to this point. It's accelerating in here, and then it's about its fastest point right here. And then right after the golf ball, it will decelerate, and then it decelerates even more into the straight line release and into the full finish. So the club head is actually decelerating when it gets into that release position. Now, if you are releasing at the golf ball, this is still the fastest point in the swing, even though you burnt up a lot of energy back here, but it's the bottom of the golf swing. So the bottom of the golf swing is always going to be the fastest point in a normal golf swing, typically. Now, if you are doing things intentionally to try and slow it down, that's one thing. But typically, most people, your average Joe that's going out there and swinging, that's no matter if they're casting or not, the fastest point is still at the golf ball. Now, it can be faster if they were to get some lag and release that club out in front. It could certainly be faster. And the reason is because you're going, if you have lag, you're typically, right in this area where the hands in front of the trail thigh and the club's going to be parallel to the ground. So now my hands are going to move from here to there when I come down into contact, and the club head's going to move that far. So the club is going to be moving pretty fast when that happens. Now, if you're casting, you're typically going to be in kind of this position. So now my club head's only going to move from there to there when my hands move from there to there. So it's just not going to be moving as fast as it's coming through. But it's still that no matter what you do, the ball is going to be the fastest point. Where the ball is right before contact is going to be the fastest point in the swing. And that's because I think people have this idea that if you cast, the fastest point in the swing is out here. And that's just not the truth, because you have more space to accelerate the club to this point. So even if you're casting and you're burning up all your energy, the fastest point is still at the golf ball. The club is decelerating when it's getting into that release position, especially if it's after contact. But it's very, very close when you are coming into contact and the ball is right there and you are releasing that club at the golf ball. It's still going to be the fastest point at the golf ball, because that's where you've used as much space as possible to create that speed. You would have to be doing something like trying to stop it intentionally to be slowing down to that point. But the fastest point is always going to be at the golf ball. So go ahead and keep your questions posted. We got another 25 minutes or so. If you're just joining us, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. So go ahead and post your question on there. I'm just checking my email, waiting for a question to be asked. So trying to stay organized here. Let's go ahead and post your questions on there. All right. So Charles L has a question. Have you heard of Paul Runyon's rule of 12? Is it better to fly the ball all the way to the hole or get it on the green as soon as possible on a chip? Hey Charles, yeah. So I have heard of it. I don't know all the. I don't know it specifically, but I have heard of it. So it really just depends. It's really personal preference of whether you like to hit kind of a pitch type shot, which carries most of the way to the hole and stops. That'd be using some more loft. I will say most players are probably better off trying to get the ball on the green rolling as soon as possible toward the hole. I typically try to do that. I try to carry the ball onto the green, a couple yards and let it roll out the rest of the way to the hole if the shot calls for it. But you do have to have a fairly good lie to do that. So if you're in the rough, it may be difficult to do that, to be able to control that. It might be better to use a wedge and get the ball up in the air out of there. But yeah, it just takes some practice. But typically, if I'm around the fairway or if I'm around the fringe or something like that, it's just too far for me to putt onto the putting surface. I will basically play that kind of chip and run type of shot where I'm using like an 8-iron or a pitching wedge and just getting the ball on, carrying the ball onto the green, 6 feet, a couple yards or so, and then allowing it to roll the rest of the way out to the hole. It's just a higher percentage shot. Sometimes spin can be unpredictable. There can be more moisture in the grass. You could get a little bit more grass in between your face and the ball, and that will lower the spin. So it may not react the way that you think it would. So sometimes spin can be unpredictable, but when you hit a kind of a chip and run type shot, that's a low spin type shot. You're trying to get the ball on the green and rolling as soon as possible. It's just usually a more consistent shot. And if you practice it, you can get very, very good at it. And that's, I played with guys growing up at my home course that were just masters at it. I mean, if they were anywhere around the green, they were always getting up and down. So if you get to where you're good at it, it's an easier shot, I think. But yeah, if you're in the rough, you may want to get loft to get it up out of there. But if you have a good lie, it's a very good shot, and I do highly recommend it, especially for higher handicap golfers that are it's going to be your highest percentage shot. There's a lot more margin for error in the shot because you're coming in so shallow with the ball, you're sweeping the turf. If you hit a little bit behind the ball, the shot's still probably going to end up pretty good. And if you thin it a little bit, it's still probably going to end up pretty good. Whereas if you do that with a wedge shot, it's going to be a lot different story. You're most likely going to hit a poor shot when that is the case. So yeah, I do recommend using that kind of shot when it's available. But yeah, it's just something you got to practice. As far as the rule of 12, and generally it just comes down to feel for me. I look at the hole and I look at a spot, roughly at least 6 feet onto the green is typically where I like to look. And I use whatever I have a good feel for it. I use whatever club that I think is going to allow the ball to carry that much onto the green and then roll out the rest of the way toward the hole. And it's going to depend on the problem with those hard rules like that is because conditions make such a big difference. So if you have if you're playing in very, very soft conditions, that first bounce when it lands on the green is going to take some momentum out of the ball because it's going to dig into the green a little bit and it's not going to roll out as much. If you have very hard greens, super firm, well, that ball is going to really take off on you. If they're really fast greens, that ball is going to really take off on it. If it's really slow and bumpy and things like that, it's going to take a lot out of it. So you can't always, I wouldn't read too much into rules like that. You're going to have to base it on feel a lot of times and understanding, okay, I need to pick my spot. This is where I want to land it. And this is where I'm visualizing it's going to roll out to. And that just comes from practicing, doing some chipping practice on your own. And that's going to get you to where you have a good feel for it. So that's what I recommend doing. Go out there and chip. Have a few clubs that you chip with. So typically, some people ask me this as well. Should I be chipping with every club in my bag, or should it just be like one or two or three clubs? Here's how I typically do it. And again, this is personal preference, but I chip with basically a handful of clubs. I have my wedges. So I'm always chipping with those depending on how much spin and things I need to get. So I have 58, a 54, and I don't usually pitch with my 50 degree. I'll usually go to a pitching wedge in that situation. So I'll go my 58, a 54, and then pitching wedge, and then I'll go to an 8-iron. And then in some situations, if it's a lot of green to work with, I'll go with a 5-iron. But it's pretty rare. I would say probably not even once per round on average, I'm chipping with a 5-iron. But probably a couple times around, I'm chipping with an 8-iron and a pitching wedge. But most of the time, probably with my other wedges. But yeah, I have a good feel for all those clubs and how much they're going to roll out. And then if you have a feel for the conditions, whether they're soft or hard or greens are fast or slow, you'll have an idea of where you need to carry this ball out to in order for it to roll onto the green. I always try to carry it at least 2 yards onto the green. Because if you are, because you're gonna flub some, right? You're gonna hit some that are poor shots. That's why I like to carry it at least 2 yards on the green, because if you get too close to that collar, there's such a huge difference between landing it on the collar and the edge of the collar and landing it on the green. It's gonna make a huge difference in your shot. So you may as well just take a little more loft and make sure that you get it on the green enough so that you don't have to flirt with that at all. Now, there might be some situations where you're very short-sighted and, you got your highest lofted wedge and you've got it's just a tough shot. You got to carry it to where it would be, just landing onto the green. And, if that's a situation, that's just a tough shot. You got to take your medicine and move on and, hopefully that you can get it close. But, in most situations, I wouldn't try to flirt with that because, like I said, if you land it in the fringe, usually it's not going to roll out near as far. If you land it on the edge of the fringe, a lot of times that'll shoot your ball forward, depending on your fringes and things like that. And you can end up going way, way by. So I like to just carry it as, at least 6 feet on the green. So that way, if I flub it a little bit or I just don't give it quite enough, it's still going to get onto the green and rolling. And it might be short, but it's not going to be a mile short, where if I was aiming to get it to land it 2 feet or 3 feet onto the green and I flubbed it and it landed in the front, it would be a lot shorter. My margin for error is going to be a lot smaller there. All right. So Richard G says, when I tried the squat move, I always hit it heaven, or I think he means heavy. So it sounds like you're just digging the club into the turf. So when you squat, when you're coming down, one thing to understand too is that this squat move is very subtle. It's not like you're going up to the top and then you're doing like this and then you're swinging the club. That's not what's happening. If you go and watch tour players swing, so you kind of understand what I'm talking about. And like I said, I'll get this up there. But basically what you'll see with tour players is that at address, they'll draw a line on top of their head from face on. You'll typically see as they go up to the top of the swing, they're going to get about 2 or 3 inches lower in the backswing. So that squat is happening as they're loading up, and it's about 2 or 3 inches lower, and that's coming from pushing their hips back. That's coming from getting some bend in the knees as they're going back. That's coming from bending over at the waist a little bit. I mean, it's coming from all those places, but very, very small amounts. It's 2 to 3 degree or 2 to 3 inches total is what's happening there. It's not like we're going. I think people think of this squat like we're going like this, and that's not what's happening. It's not we're dropping down 2 feet. It's very subtle. So we're going up to the top. We're getting 2 or 3 inches lower as we're loading up, and that's coming from staying in your posture as you're going up to the top, getting those steep shoulders. If you get those level shoulders, forget it. You're not going to be doing any sort of squatting. It's going to just lead to bad stuff in your swing. So make sure you're going up to the top. You have the nice steep shoulders as you're going up to the top and you're loading up. And then the beginning of the downswing is they are shifting their weight. So now I'm loading into my lead side. You'll see I'll get another 2 to 3 degrees lower. So watch how subtle that is. It's just that. I'm just getting 2 or 3 inches lower. I'm not doing this. You're not just dropping down from the beginning. I think people are getting this idea, and I see people who are trying to do the squat move where they go up and then they drop down and then they do that. They drop down, and then because of the way that they're used to delivering the club to the golf ball, they stand up. They have to stand up as they come into the golf ball, or they do what you're talking about, where they'll squat down and they just drop the club right into the ball because they're still coming down steep and delivering the club to the ball in the wrong way. I find that if you change more of how you're bringing this club into contact, intuitively, you will need to get lower to the ground. And a lot of times, even if it's not intuitive, if you work on it in conjunction with that, you're going to be able to get a lot further, as opposed to just thinking, oh, I just got to do the squat move and then I'll get to where I need to go. Because if you do that squat move and you still do the other stuff that you're used to doing, you're going to hit it heavy, because you have to change the way that you bring this club into the golf ball. So that's going to be the move. The move. Work on getting lower in the downswing with also bringing the club into the golf ball in the right way, and that's the move. So what most likely is going on, and Richard, it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but I'm just basing this off of what I see a lot whenever people are telling me they're doing the squat move and things like that. Because and it does make sense. Like, if you think about it, okay, well, if I want to get forward shaft lean, all I got to do is get lower to the ground, so I should just squat. Well, that makes absolutely tons of sense. But if you don't change the way that you bring the club into the golf ball, you're going to end up hitting it heavy. You're going to end up having some issues. So you got to think about the reason why you don't get forward shaft lean is most likely because you're coming down steep, and or the way that you square the face. So I'll explain that exactly why that is. So if you're coming down steep, so here I am. Here's what steep means. This club is in a more vertical position. When I'm coming down steep, what I have to do in order to get this club to come back down on plane, because this club head is not on plane at all. Here's on plane. Here, if it's steep, it's way up there. So in order to get this club head to come back down on plane, in order for me to hit a good shot, I have to stand up. And standing up is the opposite of squatting, right? So when I stand up, this handle moves up and that drops the head down. And now I can bring this club down on plane and I can hit a straight shot. Remember what I talked about earlier? All we're trying to do is we're trying to hit a good shot. That our body is reacting to hitting the face, hitting the ball straight. That's what we're trying to do. Especially if you've played golf for a long time, you've trained your body to be able to hit the ball a certain way. So if you're wanting to change that, you have to change the way your body is kind of moving to make that happen. So if you're doing this, then you're going to do that typically. Otherwise, you're going to continue to kind of come over the top, or you're just going to drop that head right into the ground, or a combination of the two. But typically what I see with players, especially better players who are hitting the ball straight typically, because you can hit straight shots doing this, you're just going to flip and add a lot of loft to them. And you're going to be inconsistent with it. But when you stand up, that drops the head down, brings the club back down on the plane. The other thing that happens when you do that, because you're standing up, you have to square the club face by doing this. So you square the club face by really pushing through with your trail hand, right? So at contact, you end up in kind of this kind of position. So my trail hand, you can see how it's pretty flat. My lead hand is in more of a cupped position here. So when I'm in that kind of position at contact, that's no forward shaft lean, but that's how I'm used to squaring up the club face. So maybe you learn, okay, I need to get this club shallowed out. Now I've got this club on plane, so I don't have to stand up. But now, because of the way that I'm used to squaring up the face, I feel like if I stay in this position, my club face is going to be wide open. Because if I keep those wrist angles, this right here, and I push the handle forward, look what happens to my club face. It's wide open. So I have to turn that handle to square up the face. Now you look at my impact zone, or my hands at impact. I got a bent back trail hand and a bowed lead hand, and I've got forward shaft lean and a square club face. So that's the move course. What I just talked about right there, that's the move course. I got to get this club that's shallowing out, and I got to get this club squaring up so that I can stay in my posture and get forward shaft lean and a square club face. That's what you got to do. And if you do that, you will squat. You will actually have that kind of subtle squat naturally, because in order to get down to the golf ball, you will have to. Now, maybe you still do this action because everyone's brains work a little bit differently. Maybe you do need to think, okay, I need to feel like I'm getting lower. I need to feel like I'm coming down and hitting the ground first with the heel of my club. I need to feel like that action. That can be helpful as well. So that's going to be better than just trying to hit the squat, because you're just going to end up, if you're a flipper and you're just trying to do this squat move in the swing, and you're doing it excessively and at the wrong time, then you're not changing the way that you're bringing the club down in transition, then you're gonna hit a lot of heavy shots like you're talking about. And I don't know if that's what's happening with you, Richard. I would have to see your swing in order to know. But just based on the information and what I see all the time, I'd imagine that's pretty close. So look at your swing on camera, see what's going on there. If you want me to pinpoint and show you exactly what's going on and how to meet your goals and how to get to where you want to get to in your golf swing, I can look at your swing and tell you exactly what you need to do in my Unlimited Swing Review program. I actually do have spots available right now. I don't always have spots available. So if you're interested, go ahead and join my Unlimited Swing Review program, and I can look at your swing and tell you exactly what you need to do. We come up with a plan, because this is what I typically do. When people sign up for my Unlimited Swing Reviews, we come up with a plan, right? So I'll send you a questionnaire to answer some questions, because typically, in a perfect world, I'd be out there on the golf course or on the range, and I'd be just sitting there. I'd be watching you hit a bunch of shots. I'd be asking you a bunch of questions and trying to get down, to what's going on. And, we don't have that luxury in the Unlimited Swing Reviews, but what we do have is, the ability to communicate through email. And then I do have your swing, a couple of your swings on video, which you'll send me. So that's basically what that acts as. So I'll send you an email with some questions that will help me understand where you're at with your golf game and what's going on. And then I'll have video of your swing. And basically what I do is I'll look at your handicap and where you are at with things. And I'll look at where you are with your skill level, your technique level, and your speed level. So, and based on your handicap, I'll basically make, put you at a level with each of those. And then whichever one is the lowest, that's the one that I will work on. So let's say you send me your swing, you're an 8 handicap, let's say, and you send me a video of your swing, and you're 8 handicap and you swing 100 miles per hour. So I would say your speed level is pretty solid. 100 miles per hour, that's above average. You're probably in the 60th percentile for speed. So I'll say that's pretty good. That's not something we really need to work on. Your technique is not very good, let's say. Let's say you have a really, you release the club early, and then your skill level might be even a little bit below that. So we may look at working on your skill level and your technique a little bit, whatever technique piece it might be, at the same time to get you the best of both worlds. But maybe you send me your swings and you're swinging at 80 miles per hour. You're 8 handicap, you're swinging at 80 miles per hour, but you have a great golf swing, and obviously your skill level's got to be pretty high if your distance is that high. Well, we're going to work on getting some speed for you so that you can lower your handicap. So there's all kinds of, but that's kind of how I look at it. Is I look at it where you are with your skill, where you are with your speed, where you are with your technique, and we'll look at the biggest discrepancies there and how it pertains to lowering your handicap, and we'll assess those and get those working really good. And we'll come up with a plan. We'll say, okay, we're going to work on this first. We're going to get you this, and then we're going to go here. There's going to be 2, 3, maybe 4 things on there. We can always reevaluate the plan as we go through it, but that's typically what I do. So that's kind of how it works with me, and then we'll work through it. We'll get through whatever it is that we're trying to do. Maybe it's a huge slice is the issue. That's a technique issue, and we'll work on its technique and a skill issue. We'll work on improving that. So, if you're a poor handicap and you're losing tons of distance, and it's not because of speed, it's because of a huge slice. I got a few students that we're doing that with right now. We'll work through my slice protocol, getting that fixed, and then we'll move on to the next piece after that. All right, so we got a few more minutes here. Go ahead and post your questions, and we'll get them answered. If not, we'll be back here tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow. Hopefully this afternoon, later this afternoon, I'll have time to. I do have a bunch of swing reviews and questions and stuff to answer today in the ball striking masterclass group as well. So hopefully I do have time to do that today. That is the goal. But yeah, that'd be cool if we can get that up today. So that way, I just have a feeling I'm going to be messing with this light and it's going to mess things up, but hopefully not. So like I said, a couple more minutes here. We'll, if no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Give you another minute here to ask a question. Aaron says, hi, Q. What's up, Aaron? Oh, we do have some questions on here. For some reason, it didn't. Sorry about that. For some reason, it didn't. So I'll get all these answered, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So sorry about that. Usually when a question is posted, it pushes the screen down. So it didn't do that this time. All right. So Paul H says, a good golfers seem to emphasize keeping your right elbow close to your body at impact. Do you teach that? Yes, it's necessary to keep that elbow in close. Because so watch me if I have my elbow out away from my body, look what has to happen. I got to go this way with the club. That's not good. In order to get this club to work from the inside and to be nice and shallowed out, I've got to have that club working in, or get that arm working in toward the body. So yes, absolutely. That is something that we teach. Mike L says, what do most pros do during the putting stroke? Try to keep the face square or allow for opening. So naturally the face is going to open. In order to keep that face square, you would actually have to manipulate it throughout the swing. You would have to kind of go, because naturally, if you think about it, if I go like this, naturally your body is going to bring that back and open it just a little bit, and then it's going to come back to close, and it's going to come back to square, and then it's going to close a little bit. So in order to keep it square the whole entire time, you would actually have to manipulate that with your wrists. You would have to do that with your wrists, and that's not something that really any tour players do. It's much easier just to allow it to rock back and forth and allow that face to open a little bit and then close a little bit in the follow through. If you have your eyes set up to where you're pretty much directly over the golf ball or just inside the golf ball. There's really not a lot of opening and closing of the face. It's pretty subtle. If you have the club, if you have the ball further away from you and you're more of an arcing stroke, there's going to be more of an opening and closing of the face, which is typically why your better putters are ones that stand, with their eyes pretty much directly over or just inside the golf ball. It's because it reduces the amount of arc in the stroke and the face doesn't go from open. It's just a little bit more consistent. It also allows you to see the line a lot better. But that doesn't mean that you can't putt better standing further away. I mean, Phil Mickelson stands pretty far away, and he's a fantastic putter. So it's really about personal preference and what works the best for you. But yeah, I would let the face open a little bit. You just don't want to manipulate. You keep the wrists quiet and just let the shoulders rock back and forth, and it'll come back to square every single time. If you try to manipulate things with your wrists and try to open it and then close it, you're going to have issues. It's just going to be tough to be consistent. Or if you try to keep it to where it's square, where you're trying to do this with your wrist to keep the face square the whole time, it's just going to be hard to time it right. So the timing would just be rocking the shoulders back and forth. So if you watch here I have it square. If I go back and then forth, I'm back to square. And that, if you just kind of have that motion there where you're just kind of rocking the shoulders, the easiest way to kind of get this feeling is if you kind of get down into your putting position here, put your hands together like this, and then just rock your shoulders. If you just rock your shoulders like this gives you the feeling of what the putting stroke is like. That's basically what you're trying to do right there. So practice that a little bit. That'll help you get a feeling for what the stroke feels like. And then Aaron R says, can you discuss specifically what is the release and what does it happens? All right. So Aaron, the release is what we talked about in the straight line release section of the Top Speed Golf System. The release, the way that now there might be, I know this is confusing because there might be a lot of instructors that define the release as something else or have little different definitions than we do. But what we call the release is the straight line release. And this is where the club, after contact, is splitting the forearms through contact. So you can see here, if I choke up on this some more, if I'm coming through contact and here I am, this is where the club is splitting the forearms. We want that to be happening roughly about 45 degrees out in front. So if you drew an angle, a line all the way down to this, to the ground, and you drew an angle with the ground, it'd be about 45 degrees. So you can see that's about a 45-degree angle there. And that's when the club is splitting the forearms. So at this point right here, this club is not released yet. Right there, it's already released. So you can see it's not splitting the forearms. If we drew a line, that would be outside my forearms. And then if we were here, that would be ahead of my forearms. It's a little bit hard to see, but that would be ahead of my forearm. But here, this is where we want to be splitting the forearms, where if you drew a line right up through the shaft, if you're on your, from face on, if you're on a drawing tool like V1 Golf, you drew a line right there, the club would be splitting my forearms right in the middle. That's when the release happens. And ideally that would happen, like I said, about 45 degrees out in front of contact. Most people, it's happening earlier. It's happening like right here, like 20 degrees out in front of contact. And when you do that, you're going to be adding loft to the face. It's going to be tough. You won't be getting very much forward shaft lean. It'll be a little bit more difficult to be consistent with it. So Michael, and we got just, I'm not going to be able to, okay. So Charles L, we're already past 10. So I got to answer these questions real quick, but I apologize that I missed them, but I do have to get going here. So no more questions after Charles is here. And then we'll wrap it up after that. So Aaron R says, can you discuss specifically? So I just talked about that. So Michael I says, when you swing the club, how strong should your grip be? Loose, strong, or just firm? So it really depends at what point in the swing and what hand. All right. So in the beginning of the swing, it's going to be very loose, very, very loose. Very, very not a lot of tension going on. But if you were to keep your grip that way the whole entire time, you wouldn't be able to hold on to the club. You just throw the club, right? From the very beginning, if you kept your grip super loose, you would just throw the club backwards. And then if you tried to be super loose in the downswing, you just throw the club into the ground or way ahead of you. So you have to grip the club hard enough or firm enough to be able to hold on to it. So Basically, you just keep the grip as loose as possible to still be able to hold on to it. But through contact, you want to have that mostly in the lead hand, and how firmly you're putting into the grip is really going to be in that lead hand. That trail hand is going to be pretty loose, but that lead hand is going to be really putting a lot of pressure into the grip as you're coming through contact. So that's really the main thing, is hold on to the club as tightly as you need to. But obviously, you don't want to be putting too tight of a grip on it, but as tightly as you need to be able to hold on to it. And that's going to be mostly in that lead hand as you're coming through contact. That's really just the basics of it. I could probably talk for 10 minutes about it. But if you want a more detailed explanation and video about it, we actually do have a video about this very subject. Go to the Crazy Detail Vault and click the one where Clay talks about how much pressure to put into the club, I think it's called. So to get to the Crazy Detail Vault, go to the instruction tab at the top, let that menu expand, click vault categories. When you get to vault categories, click Crazy Detail, and then click the grip pressure video. So Richard G says, sorry, meant heavy. I wish heaven. No worries. I got what you meant. So James M says, when you say swing as hard as you can, as it is from the shoulders, arms, and hips. When you say swing as hard as you can, is it from your shoulders, arms, and hips? It's all of it. So if you're swinging as hard as you can, you're using everything you have to swing. So it's not just your arms. So if you're swinging as hard as you can and you're just thinking all arms, well, you're not using your hips and your shoulders. So you're not swinging as hard as you can, right? So when you're swinging as hard as you can, you're using everything 100% effort. Charles L says, what are some good golf books to read? That's a good question. I have a lot of them. I like the Practice Manual by Adam Young. Yeah, I really like that one. That one's a lot about basically like how the brain works in golf, like that. Hogan's 5 Lessons is definitely pretty good. I'm a Tiger Woods guy. I love reading books about Tiger Woods. So anything about Tiger Woods I like. Every Shot Counts is good. So this one, if you want, this one's about the shots gained, strokes gained category. Essentially, he came up with that. Just basically golf statistics. Might be kind of boring to some people. Speaking of boring, this one's pretty good. Physics of Golf. It's pretty boring for most people, I would imagine, but it was pretty interesting. Jack Nicklaus, Golf My Way. That's interesting. I like the books by like the Legends of Golf. Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo has a really good book as well. I like those because it kind of takes you into kind of how they thought about the game, which makes it interesting. So I do like those. But yeah, I do like this. Going to my bookshelf. This the Practice Manual by Adam Young. That's a very good one. That'll kind of change. He doesn't say the technique isn't important, but he really delves into skill level, building golf skill level, which is kind of what I talked about earlier as it pertains to improving at golf. It's not just about technique. I think people are in this mindset that it's all just technique. It's all about my takeaway. But most of the time, it probably has nothing to do with your takeaway. There's a lot of other factors going on. There was another one. It's not necessarily a golf book, but just as a book about basically getting good at anything and what the best people in the world, kind of like how they got there. It's basically about deliberate practice, and that is Peak by Anders Ericsson. Great book about essentially what it takes to really, really improve at something and what the best people in the world do. So it's about deliberate practice, and essentially deliberate practice is just the best way to practice something and get really good at it in the fastest amount of time. So if you follow these principles that what you're working on is specific, it's measurable, and then you make it increasingly more difficult, then you're going to that's the fastest way to improve. So let's say I'm working out and I'm just working on trying to get bigger biceps. All right. So that's the specific thing. The specific thing is I want to get bigger bicep, bigger arms. So what I would work on is doing all these exercises that give me bigger arms. But how would I measure that? I would use a tape measure to measure it. And then how would I get better and better and better? I make it increasingly more difficult, which would mean I got to keep adding weight. I can't just keep lifting. If I start out really small, just lifting maybe the bar or whatever, I start out really small, but eventually I need to add more weight if I want to keep progressing. And that's how you work with golf as well. Let's say you're working on, hitting draws and fades. Well, that's your objective, and you can measure that by seeing how close you're getting to targets and things like that. But you got to make it increasingly more difficult by saying, okay, this can only have so much of a fade, where it has to be a dead solid shot, or using longer clubs. So maybe with a driver, you start out with a 7-iron, and you work your way up to maybe a 5-iron, 6-iron to add more difficulty. So with everything you do, if you're looking to improve, whatever you're trying to, like, if you just say, I just want to be better at golf, that's too broad. That's not specific enough. You need it to be, okay, well, why aren't you good at golf? What is the biggest reason? And then tackle that. And that's why I get into skill, right? And then even within skill, we break that down. And then we get into speed, right? And within speed, we break that down. And within technique, we really take that down to a more specific issue. But we look at those things that are going on, and then we work on a specific thing. And then we measure, we try to have a measure of that thing. So technique is usually pretty easy because you can see what's going on video and you can measure it there. Speed is pretty easy because obviously you can use a swing speed measuring device. Skill can be a little bit more difficult to measure, but there's definitely ways to do that. Typically we just do a test to see where we're at initially, and then we'll do the test later on to see if we're improving. But yeah, that's pretty much how we do it. So but yeah, with that, we'll wrap it up for today. Thanks for all the questions. Sorry I didn't see the questions until the very end there. Usually, like I said, it scrolls down. It pumps the questions down, but it didn't even move, so I didn't even know they were there. So anyway, thanks for joining me today. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.